Tonight, we begin with development that federal officials, local authorities, and civil rights observers had feared, tracked, and quietly prepared for. A fatal encounter that unfolded not over days or weeks, but in minutes. Minutes that ended a life. Minutes that ignited public anger. Minutes that reopened deep national wounds. What an IC agent did today crossed a line that city leaders and federal oversight bodies had hoped would never be crossed again. And when that line broke, authorities did not hesitate. They responded with urgency, visibility, and damage control for months now. There have been signals, not official announcements, not formal press briefings, just quiet indicators, that immigration enforcement activity in Minneapolis was becoming more aggressive. ICE operations have been consistent, yes, but they had also become less transparent in their consistency. Their actions followed a certain pattern, a routine, almost a script. But what set off alarm bells within city government and advocacy groups this week was that the routine went silent. No notices, no coordination, no public explanation. Experts who monitor federal enforcement activity know the warning signs: a drop in public disclosures, unscheduled field deployments, increased plainclothes presence, and sudden operational silence. All of that went quiet. And whenever enforcement activity goes quiet, something is about to get loud. Early today, local law enforcement officials detected what they described as an active federal operation, including the presence of armed agents in a residential area, something that had not been publicly acknowledged in recent months. These are the kinds of deployments federal agencies only carry out when they are signaling something specific: enforcement escalation, operational testing, or deterrence. Observers did not know which category this fell into, or whether it was all three at once. What they did know was that IC had shifted its posture. And when a federal enforcement agency shifts posture without explanation, even slightly, authorities pay attention. The official response issued by authorities tonight was not normal. It was not routine. It was not symbolic. It was urgent. Sources speaking after emergency coordination calls described the incident as serious, highly sensitive, and most importantly, politically explosive, because it involved the use of lethal force. But enforcement strategy only works if the situation de-escalates. This one did not. In fact, the response today was among the fastest multi-agency reactions Minneapolis has seen in years. Within hours of the shooting, authorities secured the scene, launched parallel investigations, and placed the agent on administrative status. These were not ordinary steps. These were high-level procedural actions, the kind only taken when officials believed the consequences could reach far beyond one incident. Tonight, official statements confirmed that federal agents were conducting an operation when the shooting occurred, resulting in the death of a Minneapolis resident. According to authorities, the incident happened before local police could fully coordinate or intervene. Officials say the operation involved multiple locations: a residential area, a nearby transit corridor, and support vehicles positioned to assist enforcement. In other words, authorities focus on the operational backbone, the component that made the enforcement action possible. This is what made today's response so urgent, because officials now acknowledge that the operation was not merely symbolic. It was active, armed, and potentially volatile. Left unchecked, experts say, incidents like this can quickly spiral into larger unrest. Understanding that authorities responded with force, but controlled force, not recklessly, not emotionally, but procedurally. They didn't rush to justify. They didn't rush to blame. They focused on containment and investigation. And this is where the story becomes more intense. Sources familiar with enforcement policy believe this operation was designed to test resistance levels in jurisdictions known for limiting cooperation with federal immigration authorities. Officials wanted to see whether local systems would push back or quietly comply, but instead, the opposite happened. Local leadership did not stay silent. They moved quickly, publicly, and decisively. The response was so visible, so immediate, that it drew national attention. You don't get national scrutiny easily. But today, Minneapolis did. Analysts speaking anonymously described the situation as a pressure test, a way to gauge how far federal enforcement could go. But today's response proved that local and state authorities remained both alert and engaged. Their actions were not just fast, they were precise. That precision matters because it shows awareness. It shows that local authorities are not passive observers. They are active participants. As reports continued throughout the day, more details emerged about the scope of the response. City officials initiated independent reviews, forcing federal transparency. State authorities confirmed parallel oversight measures. Community leaders organized rapid response efforts near the scene. This wasn't just a reaction. This wasn't just crisis control. This was institutional coordination. This was containment under pressure. And coordination is exactly what federal enforcement agencies struggle with in jurisdictions like Minneapolis. For every enforcement advance, local systems have developed methods to slow, question, or scrutinize those actions. Remember, federal authorities believed these operations could proceed quietly. That resistance would be minimal. That public attention would fade. But tonight, the opposite is happening. The spotlight is growing. Questions are multiplying. Trust is eroding. What makes this moment so volatile and so consequential is that it happened while national immigration policy is already under intense pressure. Federal leadership faces demands from multiple sides. Hardline enforcement advocates, civil rights organizations, state governments, and an increasingly skeptical public. Balancing those demands while managing high-risk operations is not strength, it's pressure, and pressure creates mistakes. Tonight, official statements, now widely circulated, made clear that authorities are not willing to ignore the consequences of this incident. Officials said the operation was inconsistent with community safety expectations. That is bureaucratic language for, this should not have ended this way. You don't hear that tone unless something serious is at stake. Meanwhile, local leadership addressed the public in a measured, somber statement. They emphasized accountability. They emphasized transparency. And they emphasized the value of human life. These were not empty words. They were signals. What makes the situation more concerning is that this incident did not occur in isolation. Alongside this operation, enforcement activity increased in nearby areas. Advocacy groups reported heightened alerts. Federal presence expanded within the same time frame. When multiple pieces move at once, something larger is underway. Analysts are now considering several possibilities. One is that enforcement agencies are escalating operations. Another is that they are testing legal boundaries. The third, the most concerning, is that they are normalizing risk. But today's response disrupted that path. What we are watching now is a test of accountability. Federal agencies want authority. Local leaders want control. Communities want safety. And the public wants answers. Tonight, sources say investigations are ongoing. They say oversight bodies are involved. And they say today's incident will influence future enforcement strategy. But local authorities are not backing down. Their response sent a message that actions have consequences. As the days go on, more details will emerge about what exactly this operation was meant to achieve. What we do know is that today's response was timely. It slowed escalation. It demanded accountability. And it forced transparency. What happens next depends on what federal authorities do next. And tonight, for first time in days, enforcement activity appears quiet. Too quiet. And when it's quiet, decisions are being made. Because today, a lesson was reinforced. Actions are watched. Force has consequences. And accountability does not disappear. This story is far from over. But tonight, one thing is clear. The pressure is real. The stakes are high. And the next move will matter.